Did you know that the amount that college students study on average has dramatically decreased in recent years? According to a 2011 study by the National Survey of Student Engagement, the average number of hours that college students study per week is just 15 hours compared to 24 hours in 1961. So you may be wondering, what has caused this dramatic decrease in average hours studied? The answer to this is the development of active studying methods and resources. It is easy to get caught up in the cycle of just reading the textbook or clicking through slide after slide after slide of your instructor's notes to study. But what if I told you that you can learn that same amount of material in just a fraction of the time? Today, I will be talking about what active studying is and how to study actively in just 3 steps. Active studying involves engaging with material in a way that is meaningful, in a way that promotes long-term retention. To study actively, one must reduce distractions, use active studying strategies, and manage their time effectively. Active studying is something that I've tried within recent years, and it has helped me in a variety of ways. It has helped me remember material longer, it has reduced stress, and ultimately reduced the amount of time that I spent studying per week. And honestly, who wouldn't want that? So before I tell you how to actively study, let's set the stage. What is the difference between active studying and passive studying? So active and passive studying primarily differ in the level of engagement involved in learning the material. So just as we learned in this class the difference between hearing somebody and listening to them, active versus passive studying is the difference between looking at the material and seeing it. You have to ask yourself, am I just reading the material or am I engaging with it? Some examples of passive learning may include just reading the textbook, clicking through instructor's slides, or rereading your answers from past tests. All of these things are certainly study methods, but they're all done on the surface level. A study done by the National Science Foundation that was posted in a news release in May of 2014 called Enough with the Lecturing showed that 55% more students fail lecture-based courses than classes with at least some sort of active learning. Now, it's impossible, of course, to predict what type of learning will be done in which class you choose, but it is possible to take any sort of material that you are given and reshape it in a way that when you are studying, you can actively learn the material and remember it for much longer in a much shorter amount of time. So instead of relying on the inefficient study methods that I mentioned, I'm going to show you how to study actively and effectively in 3 steps. So this chart also shows how active learning, you just remember so much of the material in less time. You remember the material as you go over it. You remember a much larger portion of the material than if you're using passive learning methods. So the first step to active studying is to remove distractions. So believe it or not, multitasking is a myth. According to a 2019 article from PubMed Central called The Multi-Cost of Multitasking, it is physically impossible for the brain to perform more than one high-level functioning task at once. So when this comes to studying, say you are sitting and reading some material, if you have a conversation going on behind you or loud worded music playing or your phone is beeping, instead of focusing on both things at once, your brain is actually bouncing back and forth between the stimuli, and you're just preventing yourself from being able to commit that material to your long-term memory. So one of the best ways to reduce distractions and to focus better is to use something called the Pomodoro technique. So this technique involves picking a task and setting a timer for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and every 4 times that you do this, you take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. The scientifically proven method allows you to focus and engage in certain material for lesser chunks of time and then taking breaks. This allows you to make the most of your time, and instead of sitting down and studying for hours at a time and just stressing because you're getting nothing done, you're making the most of your time and you know that you're not wasting the minutes that you are dedicating. So this is the first step to active studying because it opens the gate to allow your brain to fully engage in a subject. Now, the second step is to use certain active studying techniques to reach a deeper level of comprehension in the material. So the overarching topic with these techniques is that you are practicing recall in a variety of ways. So as outlined by the UNC Chapel Hill Learning Center in an article called Learning 101, Study Smarter, Not Harder, some techniques that can be used to review your subjects may include creating your own study guide, teaching, a pet, a friend, or even the wall will work, creating diagrams to represent material, or creating symbols to represent concepts, or even just doing practice problems. Now, the important thing about especially doing practice problems is that the recall methods must be novel. So you don't want to just go back and do practice problems that you have already done. Instead, you want to expose your brain to the same material, but from a variety of perspectives in a variety of ways. So instead of going back and redoing those same practice problems, explain them to somebody, explain the theories behind them and the concepts and the steps that you took to reach those answers, as if you are teaching it to somebody who has not heard the material before. This allows you to just engage with the material and see it from a new perspective. It is also very important to think critically and to ask questions. So if you are studying and you come across a question of how or why with a concept, don't skip it. Instead, look it up or ask your professor, find out about it, and engage with the topic. This allows you, instead of memorizing it, to understand the concept. So instead of just memorizing formulas or concepts and terms, you understand why they exist and you'll remember them for much longer. It will carry with you through the future, and you can much more easily build on those concepts in the future in harder classes as well. So even though these methods may save time, they unfortunately cannot be done in a night. The last key to successfully studying actively is time management. So cramming, even if you are using the active study methods, will unfortunately never help in the long run. So as Lisa Finnegan states in Medical Terminology, a multiple learning styles approach, cramming may or may not get you through the next exam, but it certainly will not support your long-term success in future classes or your future career. So if you study right the first time and engage with the topics, when you're called upon to remember those topics or skills in future careers or in future classes, instead of having to waste time and re-study them and relearn them, you will have understood them the first time and they will carry on with you for a longer time. So it's important when you're planning out your time to plan out your time ahead so that you can study with purpose and not waste time. So in an interview conducted by the Sheridan Library, a marketing student, Hector, stated that he would set up all of his assignments and his tests in a huge calendar so he could visually see what he was working towards and what he was studying for. This way, he was able to engage in the right topics at the right time and always be maintaining forward progress and not wasting time. So as you can see, there's a lot more than most people realize to studying actively. It involves preparation and technique, but when it's done right, it has a multitude of benefits. Active studying involves engaging with the material in a way that is past the surface level. You engage with it on a deeper level so you can retain it longer. To study actively, once you become good at actively studying, learning new material with less stress becomes easier than ever. As the UNC Learning Center says, study smarter, not harder. And I also have a works cited at the end.